3, 2, 1.
Woohoo!
Welcome to Thursday Night Live EnigmaCast, or welcome to EnigmaCast Thursday Night Live, however you want to word it. But either way, we're live Enigmites, and I got a good story for you guys tonight that we're going to go over here. Before we get into that, I'm going to do a quick announcement. My condolences to Charlie Kirk's families and his supporters out there. Rest in peace, Charlie. It was a tragedy. And hopefully this gets sorted out soon and we get some type of justice out there. But anyways, Enigmites, I made a 15-minute live on my TikTok and Instagram speaking about that. If you want to hear my comments on that and responding back to a lot of people who had some questions, you can go over there. You can take a look at that over there. But tonight, we're going to get back into, I needed a little break. We've been doing some heavy topics, had some really good guests on the show last couple weeks. And so, but every now and then, you know, I like to humble myself, get back to the basics on this and talk about good old-fashioned cryptid story. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So as always, we're going to get into the who, the what, the when, the wheres, and the whys. I'll give you my personal thoughts on it at the end. But for now, let's get into it. So this story was sent to me by several people, and I kept putting it in the back burner. I was slowly getting around to taking a look at it, and recently it came to the top of the to-do pile, and we'll get into it. So the to-do pile. So here we go. We're going to be talking about a Dogman incident that occurred in 2003, and that it made its rounds on a few of the other major podcasts. I haven't had a chance to catch those podcasts, but I've had a chance to, listen to a few other people's telling of it, and I wanted to do my own kind of research on this topic and get into it. So, not going to cite any sources on there because I didn't watch anybody else's sources. This is the research that I was able to pull together working with my own research methods and ChatGPT and a few other places. So here we go. So, the where. Daniel Boone National Forest in South Central Kentucky. Kentucky borders Tennessee, the state I was born in. However, I have very little time actually in Kentucky. I've never been to the Daniel Boone National Forest, so I don't have a visualization of what it's like. But this is where it took place. The date was October 1st, 2003. Hello, Misty. How you guys doing over there? Hi, Misty. How are you? I got the chat set over. There's a little delay. Sorry about that. So, Daniel Boone National Forest, South Central Kentucky. Date, October 1st, 2003. The who was a young man, 15 to 16 years old, and I could not find his real name. It was redacted or never was provided. Some people just refer to him as this young man. Some people refer to him as the name Kyle. Not sure why, but we're just going to call him, we'll just stick with Kyle because that's what it came across when I was, checking things out, right? He had two dogs with him, a dog named Bo and a dog named Jake. And his grandfather is involved in this story, right? So, now, this story took place early October 1st, 2003. Daniel Boone National Forest, South Central Kentucky. A young boy, was going coon hunting. And let's just get right into the story. He was going coon hunting in the Daniel Boone National Forest. And his grandfather, some sources said that his grandfather was not very mobile. Some sources said that his grandfather was disabled. I could never get a verification on that. But his grandfather drove him, but for reasons that I could not nail down, he decides to not actually get out of the truck and go hunting with Daniel, right? Or Kyle, sorry. That name came up. So he decided not to get out of the truck while Kyle was coon hunting, right? And if you never coon hunted before, they usually do it with dogs. Only way I've ever seen it done is with dogs, right? Coon hunting is raccoon hunting. I've never actually eaten a raccoon before, but I heard the meat is actually not that great. I don't know why people do it. But dogs chase them, usually tree them, and then you shoot them, right? So, but I have heard stories of raccoons actually killing coon dogs before. They wrap around their necks and get a hold of there, and they tear their throats out on that. So that does happen. Cryptid Podcast checking in. What's going on, buddy? Talking about a little Dogman story that I'm going over here. Again, breaking it down, October 1st, 2003, 15-year-old man named Kyle was in the Daniel Boone National Forest, and he was coon hunting with his dog Jake and his grandfather, unnamed as well, and he had his other dog named Bo. Right. Early morning hours, 4:30ish, 5:30ish, whatever. He's gone coon hunting. His grandfather does not get out of the car. However, I did hear that his grandfather, some stories said his grandfather had a radio they would communicate with. Other sources said he did not. So, gets on the coon hunt trail, gets going, and the dog Jake and Bo pick up on the trail of some coons, and they're doing this thing, right? And the notes that I came across and the resources I came across is that it was, I don't know why I'm stuck on this detail or not, but Jake actually trees a coon, right? Trees a coon. It could have been Bo, could have been Jake, or whatever. So the young man hears the dogs barking off in the distance, right? And so he follows the sounds of his dogs to go up there and get it, right? Now, if you've never heard coon dogs, I've only seen blue tick hounds actually used as coon dogs. I don't know what type of dogs he was using here, but blue tick hounds, they make a bailing sound when they run, like, when they run like that, right? Through the woods, right? And so he followed that sound. And what he did is he come across a tree, and they were bailing or howling at the tree. So he just assumed that this coon was up in this tree, came around the corner. And right before he got up on it, I said conflicting stories told me this. Right before he got up on it, he heard something else start yelping, something making noise. And he was obviously a seasoned kid, assumed that it was coyotes of some sort that was going on. And so he comes around the corner up on the tree. I want to get this part correct. He comes around the corner. He sees his dogs at a tree. He hears some other sounds off from what I could tell was a little bit to his left. In my mind, I'm visualizing, brushes or trees or something like that, right? Again, I've never been in the Daniel Boone National Forest, but I've got a lot of time in the Appalachian Mountains, so it's got to be kind of fairly similar. Here's this crunching sound, right? And the dogs are yipping and circling a tree, doing whatever was going off, right? And then from what the story says is that the boy was at the tree, and out of the corner of the tree or out of the corner of his peripherals, a large creature stepped out from behind the tree, and Kyle said that he had a coyote in his mouth, right? And Kyle, again, says that he went into a semi-state of shock, right? And he described the creature as being a typical, I wouldn't say atypical Dogman description. 6 to 7 feet tall is the height you normally hear, right? This one had red eyes. When I've spoken to, I think it was Tim Gayhart from the Ohio Bigfoot Research, he's seen them with yellow eyes. Harley Owens down in Tennessee said he's seen them with, during the daytime. I've also heard, other people talk about they've seen them and they've had red eyes. And then when I did a research down from ones that I've seen in Texas, they had yellow eyes, right? So with that whole thing that was going on back and forth with that, I've heard them have red eyes, yellow eyes, and I've even heard one story of them having blue eyes, right? But he said he saw red eyes, and it kind of freaked him out a little bit, and he kind of went into like a little state of shock. The creature, two different tellings that I've heard of this story was as the creature first stood at him and made eye contact with him. The other ones were saying that the creature came out, was extremely aggressive, and came at the boy and took off, right? So I have two different, and the reason why I had equally the amount of reports that both things happened, right? So we're just going to go with it that for the sake of this channel, he saw a dogman with a coyote in his mouth, and the dogman came at him in some sort of way to the point of the fact that basically it freaked him out. And he broke out. He took off running, which is, again, fight or flight kick, saying this is a 15-year-old boy. And he started hauling back to the direction that he came from from his truck with his grandfather, I'm sorry. But one thing that both stories, tellings of the stories that I heard from multiple locations is that the Dogman gave chase. So whether it came at him aggressively first or if it stood there and saw him first or whatever, but there was a foot race that broke out between this kid and this Dogman. Now, as he was taking off down, heading back to the truck where his grandfather was at, he said that within about 15 to 20 feet, this thing had closed on him, and he felt that he was about to get snatched up. But his biggest dog, I think it was Jake, attacked the Dogman along the way. And he could hear the Dogman and Jake, the other dog, get into a big fight. But he didn't look back, right? He just kept on running, kept on running, kept on running, kept on running. And it didn't really go into too much detail how far he had to run back to the truck before he got to his grandfather. But it's safe to say that based on the capabilities of a man to run through the woods, I don't know if you've ever been in the woods early in the morning or not, but I've been in the woods early in the morning, and I've literally had squirrels scare me to the point where I've almost, my heart had pounded out, right? Like everybody's a brave guy until you've had to go to a deer stand at 4 o'clock in the morning in the woods. It's terrifying. Or walk out of the woods at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's terrifying. So in my mind, I just made up that based on the distance and stuff like that, he was 1.5 miles out, right? And this wasn't a clean run, according to Kyle. He fell through the bushes. He was looking over his shoulders. He ran into a tree. He fell down. He slipped. He stumbled. I mean, this kid took a little beating along the way getting back to the truck, right? He was going through it, right? And as he was moving along and he was running down this actually made me kind of sad when I read this, right? But stay with me till the end on this. He was torn between the love of his dog and what he saw. So some stories were saying that he was calling out, like calling for his dogs to come. Some of them were screaming that say that he was just screaming for help, right? You know how it is, man. When freaking stories that get told, they get spliced up along the way. But either way, this boy was worried about his dog, but his dogs. At the same time, he was worried about this thing that he had just saw in the wilderness, right? So as the chase was going down, he was breaking through the woods and stumbling. So in my mind, it had to be less than 0.5 mile, right? A full out sprint, 0.5 mile back to the truck, which is a long distance through the wood. It's not like a track where you're running on flat, level ground. You're running through the woods, at dawn. It's pretty challenging. He's falling around, he's kicking, hitting some tree limbs or whatever. He's worried about his dogs. All of a sudden, the truck comes into view. He sees his truck with his grandfather, right? Rushes to the truck, dives into the truck, man, and starts having like basically a semi panic attack or just speaking incredibly fast to his grandfather, right? He's telling his grandfather like, hey, look, we got to go. Something's going on. His grandfather's like, what's going on? And again, this is where I got conflicting reports, but I can imagine the conversation being something like, I just saw X, Y, and Z. This happened. I just saw this crazy looking creature out there, this Dogman type situation out there, werewolf, whatever he described it. And then the grandfather, two different versions that I was told that the grandfather casually started the car and left. The other side of the story that I heard that the grandfather didn't start the car, but had the same conversation that he had with the first story. The first version I heard of this story from like 3 or 4 sources was that he drove home, and before they got out of the truck, he had the conversation I'm about to tell you. The other version of the story was he didn't drive away, and he had the versions of the conversation that I'm about to tell you with right now. So his grandfather had told him that if he's going to hunt these woods, he's going to have come to grips that there are certain things in these woods that cannot be explained. And that he told them that him, and not only him, but his great, uncle, what I guess it was his grandfather's brother, had experiences in these wilderness with something that they referred to as Old Slewfoot, right? OLE Slewfoot. Now, remember that name. I'm going to double back to you on the second and go into more detail on that, right? And so he basically just confirmed by telling, the young man that, that they've encountered some things out here. His uncle had encountered it, and he had encountered it when he was in these woods hunting. And this was a part of life. It's part of their way of life that he was saying. And I know that when people heard that part of the story, that was the part that they're like, yeah, right. Well, I'm actually tell you that out of all this story that I've heard, that's actually the most believable part. I grew up in Upper East Tennessee. I was born in this place called Johnson City. It's on the North Carolina, Virginia border, smack dab in the middle of the Appalachian Mountains, smack dab. The Smoky Mountains were east of me. Grandfather Mountain was down there. I grew up in the lands that, the Cherokee Indians and the Choctaw in the southern part of Southeast Tennessee had. My grandmother used to tell us younger lads, and again, I've told this story before, but I'll tell it one more time for fresh listeners. When you grow up in the South, at 13, you get a shotgun. Everybody did. Everybody got a shotgun. And the shotguns that you normally get, if you had rich parents, you got a 20 gauge. It doesn't have that much kick. But if you had not so rich parents, you got what was called a 410 shotgun. It was a shotgun that shot these little bitty skinny shells, right? And you could put, the one I had could hold 3. And it was actually, they had got my shotgun at a flea market, and it was like a bolt action shotgun. It was very rare, right? But it held 3, right? Used to go in the woods and play with shotguns. That was just how we grew up. That was it. There was no game warden up there. We were just, it was not uncommon for kids down there to walk around in the woods with shotguns. But the older generation, and they would warn you that when you go into these woods, they would say, hey, look, boys, you guys be careful out there. They would refer to it as an old hate. There's an old hate in those woods. That's how they would say it. There's just an old hate in those woods. You need to be careful. And I could do a whole podcast. You know what? I think I'm actually going to do that. I could do a whole Enigma live on the rules of the Appalachian about whistling and bells and things that you hear down there, things that you shouldn't do and things that you shouldn't respond to. So the fact that this guy's grandfather is having this conversation with him is the most believable part of this story for me, right? And people say, oh, why would your grandfather send you in there if there was something in there like that? That's the same reason why they do it in the South. You don't avoid the woods down there. You just don't do it, right? You just don't avoid it. You just don't live in your house. People in the Appalachians do close their blinds at night. They don't open their blinds. They don't, if you hear knocking or stuff on your doors, I've told stories on this channel that'll make your skin crawl about things that show up at 3:00 in the morning in the Appalachian Mountains. So that's the most believable part for me for this story was his grandfather saying, hey, look, I encountered this thing, right? So did your great uncle. And there's things here. If you're going to go in those woods, boy, you're going to have to understand it. You're going to have to deal with some things from time to time, right? And so, yeah, that is how the story went. Now, the next day, or when the sun comes up, again, it's very conflicting stories on it. It was all a lot of different directions that it went on. Either that same day or the day after, they went back to the same spot. His uncle, or Kyle went back during the daytime with his grandfather, and they found his dog. I don't know which one it was, man. I think it was Jake. They found Jake. He was a little bit cut up or whatever. Looked like he got into a little bit. Supposedly he made a full recovery, and it doesn't really go on to mention much about what Bo did or whatever, right? I think Jake was the actually bigger of the dogs or whatever. But they went back and they did find the dogs. Now, happy ending with the dogs. Nobody got munched on that. Nobody got taken care of with, no one died other than the Coyotes in this Dogman story, right? So you know how I do around here at Enigmites. When I get into something, I like to go and I like to pull up the facts. I like to go and look up and not intentionally debunk something, but to actually go and say, hey, look, this could happen, this could not happen. Now, so the first thing I can do is that I'm going to give you my interpretation at the very end here on what I think it is. But first of all, I'm going to run some facts down to you. Number one, hunting is permitted in the Daniel Boone National Forest. Not all national forests will let you hunt, but you can in the DBNF, right? Again, it's permitted as long as most areas of the forest, species like deer, wild turkey, squirrel, rabbit, quail, raccoons, and grouse, and others, raccoon hunting is what Kyle was doing in '03 is legal. And it's actually common in this area. So yes, you can legally hunt in the national forest, right? You have to get a license to do it, but you can do it. Now the regulations are is that the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife, they have bag limits. You can only do so much or whatever. And I'm sure there's poaching. There's game wardens and stuff in there as well. The hunting is allowed all over the national forest except in developed recreational sites, campgrounds, picnic areas, or whatever. So I know people were dunking on this saying, oh, no, you're not. You can't even hunt in national forest. You can in this one, right? And if you want to go there, you can go look it up, man. Wildlife management areas, you can do that as well, right? So Nick hunting, it aligns. It checks out, man. You can go in there and you can go and hunt, right? It lines up, right? Now, I said that to go on and say this. Again, you know, on this channel, I always believe in being very respectful, right? And I don't go out and I don't just flat out say something is, that's not right or this is not other, but I can tell you my own personal beliefs in something and my own personal feelings in something, right? This story to me sounds a little bit made up. And before you hang up the phone, let me tell you the reasons why, right? Let me tell you the reasons why. I've been blessed with this is my 92nd EnigmaCast episode. I've been blessed to have and meet a lot of very experienced woodsmen. I grew up in the South, right? I have people on my phone that I could call right now on my phone who have seen dogmen before in the wild. I'm going to drop their names. Again, Joe Barger is a famous dogman story that happened in the Manistee National Forest. I've spoken with his wife. I've talked to Joe Barger's wife. Joe Barger was going to come on the show. Some things went sideways with the scheduling. He's still not out of the woods. I've spoken with Joe Barger. Joe Barger's wife, I'm sorry. He shot and killed a dogman in the Manistee National Forest. Harley Owens is in my phone. Harley Owens came face to face in southeastern Tennessee with a dogman in broad daylight. My boy Drewski from the Cryptid Warfare podcast, right, has hunted dogmen in Mountain City, Tennessee. I know people who have had real life encounters with dogmen. Again, Ohio Bigfoot researcher as well. Tim Gayhart, I'm sorry. Face to face with 4 dogmen in Ohio. I know people who have met dogmen. These things are real, right? So don't think that me telling you that this story has a few holes in it I'm not saying that these things are not real, right? I'm just saying that this story either has been told so many times that it's starting to get a little watered down, or that it's the facts of the story don't add up. These creatures are real. And so watching in my work, and I 100% believe that. Now, here's the reasons why this sounds like a made up story. The Daniel Boone National Forest is not a hot spot for any type of dogman activity. Now, there is an area in Kentucky called the Land Between the Lakes, which is an extremely, extremely hot spot area for dogman and all kinds of stuff, right? Now, the Land Between the Lakes is a 170,000 acre peninsula between Lake Barkley and Kentucky Lake, created when Tennessee and Cumberland rivers were dammed way back in the day. It straddles western Kentucky and northeastern Tennessee, not south central Kentucky. So these south central Kentucky, when you think south central Kentucky, it's Bowling Green, it's Somerset, Glasgow, and Daniel Boone National Forest, right? That's where Kyle had this. Now, if Kyle would have had this in the Land Between the Lakes, I would have said this 100% was probably right. But that's not the reason why I don't think this story is legit, right? And I'm going to tell you the number one reason why is why I would think that this story might be a fanciful telling / creepypasta, right? But dogmen are real, all right? So don't let one-eyed Sasquatch Steve jump on here because he'll think I'm switched sides. Dogman attacking a dog doesn't live, period. So the fact that the other dogs survived Just gave me a moment of pause. It gave the story that feeling of, hey, that warmth thing or whatever, right? But benefit of the doubt, man. The dog might have made it. But also too, I've covered enough stories on here, and I've talked to people who have had these encounters that two things came out of the way from their Dogman encounters. Number one, the malice and the hate that emanated off of these creatures when they came into contact with them was terrifying. And number two, they all said the same thing. If this thing would have wanted me, it would have gotten me, right? So again, I feel bad even saying this, but the fact that this kid Kyle even survived, I mean, somebody has to live to tell a tale, right? But the fact that he got away for a Dogman being that close and was coming at him, I just don't, it just gives me pause, right? But here's the main reasons why the main reasons why are the following. Is he didn't give his real name. He didn't give his real name. He didn't give his grandfather's name, his great uncle's name. And when people do that, I know they have their reasons. And again, I'm going to defend this a little bit. I'm very conflicted on my thoughts right here. Like, I want to believe this story, right? I'm very conflicted on it. I've had people reach out to me and say, hey, look, man, can you tell my story? I don't want to tell my story. I don't want people to laugh at me. I totally get it, man. I totally freaking get it. And it's true, man. It happens a lot, man. I totally freaking get it that people do those things or say those things or whatever. And you hurt people's feelings, man. No one wants to get ridiculed. I'm almost impossible to offend. And honestly, I don't care. So I'll take their stories and I'll tell their stories for them. But also, again, another thing on this channel that I look for is that there's no police report. And again, that's not uncommon in these stories. But when it adds up, man, when it stacks up and it stacks up and it stacks up, one thing just led after another. No name, no police report, no investigation, grandfather's name not given. I mean, and if I'm being honest, if I'm being deadly honest, I have trashed at least 20 Dogman stories that sounded just like this. I was hunting in the woods. It was late at night. I saw this dog. He came at me. I ran for my life and I survived. And I was in, this national forest, right? But that's not the main reason, y'all. And that's not the main reason at all. That's not the main reason. At all those added up, it leaves me at 50-50, right? Like, this could be real, this could not be real. This story I'm talking about right there. But it was when the boy mentioned the term Slewfoot that made me go, huh? Right? And the reason why is because I know Slewfoot, and every boy in Southeast Tennessee, and I would say probably Western North Carolina, 100% sure West Virginia. West Virginia is the only state smack dab in the whole state's in the Appalachian mountain range. The whole state is, right? Knows Slewfoot. Slewfoot's not a Dogman. Any boy growing up in the South and Appalachians know that Slewfoot is a reference to a bear, a creepy, like crazy Scarface looking zombie bear that they used to tell stories about when you would go into the wilderness on literally like Boy Scouting trips, right? Like horror stories about old Slewfoot. Old Slewfoot was this bear that was so big and so massive and supposed to be demon possessed. They just add stuff onto the stories, right? And so Kyle specifically stated in his statement that he told his grandfather that it wasn't a bear, it wasn't this, it wasn't anything, it wasn't that, right? But he said it was, and he said his grandfather told him in return that him and his uncle called it old Slewfoot. And I thought to myself, that's just the hook that got me, right? And that hook just got me. Slewfoot's not a Dogman. You can go look it up on your own and go look into it. And anybody that grew up in the areas in the South that is maybe as far down as Georgia, if you have a Slewfoot story, they used to tell us literally when we go camping. It was like one of the scary stories they would tell you when you would be cooking marshmallows. It was about Slewfoot, this bear. It's impossible to kill grizzly bear. It supposedly was cursed by medicine men from whatever Cherokee Indian tribe or whatever. But it's a whole nother thing, right? And there's no way. And again, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, man. I try to give him the benefit of the doubt that maybe Dogman wasn't a term or wasn't a werewolf when his grandfather was telling this to Kyle. But the way Kyle was telling the story, or supposedly told the story, was that it was a Dogman. But if Kyle, and I don't know how they do it in Kentucky, but I just find it hard to believe that Kyle would not know what what old Slewfoot was when it's later on in life, and it never came out in the story that went with it. So don't tell Sasquatch Steve Taylor or any of my other buddies on that. But Enigmites, I don't think this story doesn't hold up for me, and it definitely does not meet up to the standards of investigation that I would normally look into, that I would normally make me believe a story. And you guys know I've seen some stuff, and I'm naturally a believer. Now, having said that, I want to put some disclaimers on this as well. I got no beef with Kyle or whoever told this story, and the people who sent me this story. There was like 7 of you. Thank you for sending me this story. It's been sitting on my folder here. It's been sitting in my to-do folder for about 6 months, but as you guys know, I just recently moved to Florida. It was in there. A lot of people were asking me to look into it. Finally got down here, finally got some time to myself, and I looked into it. And I'm sorry. I just don't believe this cryptid encounter happened, literally only because the old Slewfoot reference that was put in by the guy that told the story. I think it's creepypasta. I think that he went on there, somebody told a fanciful story, and if I'm being honest with you, matter of fact, the Cryptid podcast, if you're in the chat, man, everybody say hi. Everybody say hi. His episode is in post-production right now. It's going to drop next week. That's a story. When you hear this guy's story told on the channel next week, then you'll know that's a story, right? That really, you could tell that really happened. This on this end, man, I'm thinking that, this story doesn't measure up to doesn't measure up to my standards of believability on that. My other co-hosts would definitely dunk all over this, and they would say that, no, we've heard better stories, and they're not lying. We've heard, better stories. But again, I'm down for a good story, but I tell you what, no disrespect to the people who sent me this story. Thank you very much. Do you get a t-shirt? Nah, y'all ain't get a t-shirt for this. Sorry. Keep sending me your stuff though. Maybe I'll pull another one up and then you'll get a free t-shirt on that. But no, you're not getting any free swag on this one. But it was a good story, and I'm glad I did the investigation, and I'm glad I did go in there to do it on that. But as always, guys, go do your own research. Go do your own looking. If I got anything wrong, just leave it in the comments of the video. If you're Kyle and you somehow come across and you see this video and you would like to come on the channel and tell the story yourself and do a better job, I'll let you do that, right? And then again, you and I can talk, and we can, maybe something was left out, or maybe you can explain it a little bit better. But yeah, man, and no disrespect, but I ain't buying it. And again, I feel so bad. I'm gonna get it. Y'all know my phone's gonna ring in about an hour, and then people are gonna be calling me like, "Ha, so you're finally switching sides." I'm not switching sides. I'm telling you, this is real. But I also tell you that I've talked to guys that have lived it, and guys have told me stories. And again, it's funny that he's in the chat right now, the Cryptid podcast. When you hear his story next Thursday, that's a freaking story, right? When you hear that story, then maybe you'll be like, "Hey, look, I can see why you would think this story is, just doesn't measure up on that." But having said that, you know how we do. I like to close with a little bit of history lesson. Dogmen are real. There are sightings of them all out the world. If you look at this book over there, the 54 Apocrypha, the books that were kept out of the Bible, you go read the book of Enoch. In the book of Enoch, there's a chapter called the Book of Giants. The Book of Giants talk about how the Nephilim came down, the Watchers came down, and sinned against all forms of flesh and whatever. And they made hybrid creatures on that. Again, you can go to my Instagram channel right now and you can look. Also, if you go into the Hamburg Forest over in Austria, right during World War II, you would see a lot of scars on, we've talked about this before, a lot of German officers, SS officers would have scars on their face, right? And they will tell you that they would do that to make themselves look more, menacing. That's not a truth. German SS officers were the only one allowed to hunt in this forest called the Black Forest in Austria. I don't know the name in Austrian or German or whatever. But that same forest is the exact same forest where all the dark fairy tales you've heard of your life come out. Hansel and Gretel, Big Bad Wolf, Little Red Riding Hood, all that stuff. The very first werewolf encounter ever was about a blacksmith who made a deal with the devil. The villagers caught him, and he was a werewolf. That was out of the Hamburg forest. The end of World War II, the Allied newspapers were reporting that soldiers in the field were encountering werewolves, and they were calling them super soldiers. The very first super soldier program was actually werewolves. Operation Paperclip, we brought all those scientists over here. And right about then, the United States of America, they start developing our own super soldier program. I've talked to people who have hunted dogman and creatures in the National Forest. The National Forest, the FBI has no jurisdiction in there. The Department of Homeland Security does. DHS has jurisdiction of crimes in National Forest, which is weird. But also, too, if you go to my Instagram channel, I think it was in 2022, they tried to pass a bill in Congress banning animal-human hybrid testing. And the Department of Homeland Security had the bill killed, saying that they might want to do research for pig hearts in humans. So why would the DHS get involved killing legislation about animal-human hybrid experiments? Joe Barger said about 3 months after he killed that dog man up in Michigan, he got pulled over at a way station, held at a way station while DHS agents showed up, sweated him down and said, "You killed our asset." So this rabbit hole goes really, really deep about we're growing them, we're cutting them loose in the forest, we're hunting them, we have teams to go in there and kill them when they get out of control, we're sending them in the tunnels to fight Nephilim giants. Whole big rabbit holes. Go to my EnigmaCast archive, go down there, all those podcasts, pick your poison in there, anything talking about a dog man, and you'll know that I'll bring that up. So these things are 100% real. These things have been around for a very, very long time. They're actually starting to show up in England, and there's been reports of them already showing up for 20 years down in Australia. I don't know about New Zealand, though, but down in Australia, right? So they absolutely are 100% real, and I've talked to people who I trust and have told me incredible, truthful encounters, hand-to-hand encounters, and so dogmen are 100% real. But this story, I'm sorry, y'all, this ain't real for me. But prove me wrong. Kyle, if you're watching this, or anybody else that has firsthand knowledge of this, if you want to come on and talk to me, let me know. Friendly environment, won't be any disrespectful. Prove me wrong. I'm all for it or whatever, and we'll have a good conversation on that. So, having said that, guys, you know how we do around here. We're going to wrap this up. Hit the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up. You can give me a thumbs down if you want, but just do me a favor. Leave me the reason why you gave it a thumbs down in the comments below, and we will go from there. So, friends, families, and enemies, that's all you get for $1, nerds. And I got to do this. I'm going to snap and then do it. And we're out.
Subscribe now and turn on the notifications to join us on this extraordinary journey into the unknown.